Deep inside a U.S. Navy destroyer, there's a side of life most people never see, one shaped by rank, responsibility, and command. While sailors work long hours in tight spaces, sleeping in stacked racks and keeping the ship running around the clock, the officers who lead them live very differently. Hidden away from the noise and constant motion is an area known as officer country. This is where commanding officers and senior leaders eat, sleep, and plan operations, making decisions that affect missions, crews, and lives at sea. Compared to the rest of the ship, these spaces offer more privacy and comfort, something few expect on a warship built for speed and combat, not luxury. So what does life really look like for the high-ranking officials aboard one of the U.S. Navy's most demanding warships? The chain of command. Before we explore the life of a high-ranking official on a destroyer, who's the highest ranking and who ranks the lowest? Hierarchy on a destroyer is a clear chain of authority that starts with the commanding officer and flows down through officers to the enlisted sailors who carry out daily operations. At the very top aboard a destroyer, the CO, typically a commander in the U.S. Navy, has absolute responsibility for everything the ship does, from navigation to combat readiness, and is referred to simply as captain while in command. The CO answers to a higher commander, the destroyer squadron commander, who oversees multiple ships and so does not stay on a single ship. Immediately under the CO is the executive officer, the ship's second in command. The XO runs the daily affairs of the destroyer, oversees personnel, enforces discipline, and ensures orders from the CO are properly executed. On many destroyers, the XO also does the role of a navigator or training officer. Below the CO and XO, you have department heads. These are senior officers responsible for major areas like operations, engineering, weapons, and supply. Department heads usually hold the rank of lieutenant commander or lieutenant and lead teams of division officers. Division officers are usually just junior officers that manage specific areas, like a weapons division or a communications division. They survive enlisted sailors in their division and keep all the important systems running. Beneath the officers, there are enlisted sailors such as petty officers and seamen who execute all the technical and manual tasks needed to operate the ship's systems day and night. Within this group, chief petty officers and other senior enlisted leaders act as the backbone of their departments. With this hierarchy, every sailor and officer on a destroyer knows their role, but those at the highest level enjoy more comfort. Before we dive into where these high-ranking officials sleep, please like the video and subscribe for more first-hand looks into life aboard U.S. Navy ships. Rank decides where you live at sea. The high-ranking officers aboard a destroyer sleep and live in a part of the ship known as officer country, a section set apart from the main enlisted berthing to give commissioned officers their own sleeping and workspace. This area is located within the superstructure of the ship and is designed to provide slightly more privacy and comfort than the crowded bunks that the rest of the crew members have to squeeze in. Inside officer country, officers usually sleep in staterooms or cabins, which are small individual or shared rooms with a bunk, storage, and often a desk. These staterooms act as sleeping quarters and a place to store uniforms and equipment and to handle paperwork when not on duty. Depending on the size and class of the destroyer and the number of officers aboard, most cabins house 2 or 3 officers. The space is still tight compared to living on land, but it's a luxury when you look at how the lowest-ranked officers hot rack on the same bunk beds. The commanding officer and executive officer receive the most private and desirable cabins. On many ships, the CO has his own stateroom and sometimes even a private bathroom, and he XO also has a single stateroom that can serve as both sleeping quarters and a workspace. Other senior officers, such as department heads, might be assigned cabins with 1 or 2 peers, while the junior officers are more likely to share a cabin with 2 or more officers. These officer quarters are still small because of the limited space on a destroyer, but they might also have separate bathroom and sanitary facilities from the low-ranking officials. Officer bathrooms explained. Although high-ranking officials on a destroyer use the same basic shipboard heads, which are bathrooms and showers as the rest of the crew. The location, access, and privacy of those facilities are different. On modern destroyers, there are sanitary spaces located near the officer country, including toilet, sinks, and shower stalls that are designed to serve the officers assigned to that living area. These heads are separate from the large communal enlisted heads and are placed pretty close to the officers' staterooms, so it's easier for them to get there when they are off duty. In many cases, the commanding officer and executive officer have private or semi-private bathroom facilities connected directly to their staterooms. These typically include a toilet, sink, and shower that can be accessed without going into the main passageway. It gives them more privacy and convenience than the shared heads. Sometimes, a destroyer gives them a private head for the CO and XO. Other officers share a sanitary compartment serving several staterooms. These shared heads still differ from enlisted facilities by being closer to the officers' quarters and having fewer people using them. This means a shorter wait and a quieter space. The facilities themselves are functionally similar, with a flushing fresh water toilet, shower stalls with curtains and wash basins. But this is for more privacy, fewer users, and proximity to officer living areas. While most destruction-class destroyers don't have luxurious sleeping areas and bathrooms, the other crew members live in less comfortable places. In fact, the high-ranking officials have areas more comfortable compared to where the enlisted officers stay. What's the difference between the officers and the rest of the crew? Officer quarters versus crew berthing. The real difference. The difference between where the crew members live and where the high-ranking officials live on a destroyer is a clear sign of the hierarchy. Officers live in a specially designed section, set apart from the main crew to reduce traffic and provide a consistent space for planning, meetings, meals, and rest. Within this area, commissioned officers sleep in tat rooms or cabins. These are compact enclosed rooms with a bunk, storage, and small workspace, giving them more privacy and personal space than the open bay compartment used by the enlisted sailors. The staterooms are shared with only one or two peers, but for the most senior officers, there might be single cabins close to the wardroom or bridge. But if you step into the living areas of the enlisted sailors, it looks completely different. These sailors live in berthing compartments. These are large open spaces filled with racks stacked 3 high. These spaces can house dozens of sailors, sometimes 40 or more, in a single compartment with only small footlockers to store their personal items and very little personal space. The worst part is hot racking. Usually 2 or 3 sailors in rotating shifts share a rack. So, as one sailor is leaving for their shift, another is just arriving to sleep, sometimes when the berth is still very warm. The sailors must manage their sleep and rest around watch schedules and the needs of others in the same space. Officer quarters are modest by civilian standards, but they are completely different from the crew's berthing area. In fact, high-ranking officers don't only enjoy privacy and separate spaces, but also have assistants to take care of their living areas. Role of stewards. Stewards are sailors assigned to support the daily life of officers, and on a destroyer, although their role has changed, they still focus on service and housekeeping. Historically, especially before the 1970s in the U.S. Navy, a steward or stewardsman was assigned to an officer's quarters to keep the stateroom neat, make the bunk, tend uniforms, and generally maintain order in those living spaces. They would clean the cabins, handle laundry, and ensure the room met the ship's cleanliness standards. They also worked closely with the officers they supported. The steward's duties were formal parts of shipboard life to help officers focus on their responsibilities. In addition to cabin care, stewards usually served meals and provided table service in the wardroom, the officers' mess, and performed different cleaning and service tasks to keep officers' spaces and communal area orderly and sanitary. In modern navies like the U.S. Navy, the official steward rating was merged into broader culinary or service ratings in the 1970s, and today these responsibilities are often handled by culinary specialists or mess management specialists. They prepare and serve meals for all personnel. Officers are more responsible for their own personal spaces now, and the traditional dedicated steward role aboard many warships has largely disappeared. Aside from having separate living areas and bathrooms, high-ranking officers even eat separately. But before we explore the details, hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for the latest insights into the U.S. Navy, from weapons to live on sea. Why officers eat separately on destroyers. High-ranking officers aboard a destroyer eat in a separate space called the wardroom, which serves as both their dining and social area. It's separate from the enlisted mess decks where the rest of the crew eats. In peacetime, this wardroom uses formal customs. Officers wear the right uniform, remove their hats upon entering, and don't sit down until the presiding officer is seated. If someone arrives late, the custom is to request permission to join the meal from the senior officer present. They even need to ask permission to leave before the meal ends. Because destroyers are small ships, they usually have only one wardroom where the officers eat on plates and at tables, instead of in the open mess style used by enlisted sailors. Meals are often served in 2 sittings to accommodate watch schedules and the ship's operational tempo, but officers still observe etiquette. They arrive a few minutes early, stand until the senior officer invites everyone to sit, and avoid loud or inappropriate conversation during meals. The food itself often comes from the same galley as the enlisted meals, but having a separate space will give the officers a quiet environment to eat, meet, and discuss ship business as needed. During wartime or when the ship is at general quarters, formal wardroom meals may be set aside completely, with officers grabbing quick food topside as time allows. This is unlike the enlisted sailors who eat in larger mess decks in a cafeteria-style setting, where trays, serving lines, and communal seating gives them a less formal dining experience. The high-ranking officers have separate living, dining, and bathroom areas, but that doesn't mean that they do less work compared to the enlisted sailors. In fact, they have a lot of work on their hands, and it's their job to make sure everyone on the ship is doing what they should. How do high-ranking officers spend their day on a destroyer? Daily life and duties. A typical day for a high-ranking officer aboard a destroyer starts before most of the crew is even awake. The ship's schedule is posted the night before and sets the ship's rhythm. The CO and XO rise early to review reports, check weather and operational updates, and prepare for the morning's briefings. Before breakfast, senior officers lead a morning muster or mission planning session. There, the department's report status and the CO outlines the priorities everyone must follow for navigation, training, maintenance, or tactical drills. Once underway, officers spend much of their morning standing watches or visiting key operational areas such as the bridge and combat information center. Here they oversee navigation, monitor sensors and communication systems, and ensure the ship's position and course meet mission requirements. Throughout the day, they coordinate with department heads that are handling engineering, weapon systems, supply, and personnel. This keeps every section aligned with the CO's instructions. While junior officers stand watch and brief their superiors, the department heads manage their teams in specialized tasks. Lunch often comes between watches, either in the wardroom or quickly between duty periods. In the afternoon, the XO usually focuses on personal matters, training, scheduling, and discipline, while the CO continues with their tasks, attending meetings and communicating with higher command. Sometimes there are drills for damage control, firefighting, or tactical maneuvering, and when these officers supervise and evaluate performance. By evening time, there are more watch rotations and status checks. After that, the officers review the day's events, prepare orders for the next day, and brief the CO or XO on issues that require attention. Depending on how busy the day is, senior officers might have time to eat, rest, or prepare for tomorrow's responsibilities before sleep. Then the cycle will begin again. But there's an interesting twist. Even with how busy the senior officers are, they follow all the needed etiquette in their wardrooms, from uniforms and seating to even the topics they can talk about. How can you be on your best behavior when in a wardroom? Well, all the high-ranking officers take etiquette seriously. Inside the wardroom. The wardroom on a destroyer is the ship's officers' mess and lounge. It's a dedicated space where the commissioned officers eat, meet, relax, and conduct informal business away from the enlisted mess deck. It's the officers' shared living area aboard ship, and on a small warship like a destroyer, all officers typically use the same wardroom instead of splitting into multiple messes like seen in larger vessels. Wardroom etiquette is built on long-standing naval custom, designed to show respect for rank and maintain order. When entering or using the wardroom, officers are expected to be in the uniform of the day and remove their hat before sitting or when others are eating. Officers are expected to be punctual for meals, and no one sits down until the presiding officer takes their seat. Conversation during meals is also governed by tradition. Topics like politics, religion, and shop talk are generally discouraged so that meals remain pleasant and avoid conflict. Officers pay into a mess fund to support meals and upkeep, while the mess treasurer will manage all the income and expenses. Aside from dining, the wardroom functions as a social hub where officers can grab a coffee, relax between duties, or hold informal discussions. Traditions that still shape officer life at sea. Aside from the etiquette, there are some informal traditions among officers that build camaraderie outside of their formal duties. One of the best-known customs is the wedding down celebration for newly promoted officers. When an officer is promoted, they traditionally host a gathering for fellow officers and cover the cost. This involves spending the difference in pay between their old and new rank on drinks or a meal. Another long-standing custom in naval life is the side boy ceremony. This is a formal ritual that honors visiting high-ranking officials or dignitaries. When a senior officer or special guest boards or departs a ship, the sailors line up in 2 even rows at the gangway as side boys. The number of side boys reflects the rank of the guest and is part of a broader ceremonial tradition that links modern practice to historical methods of hoisting officers aboard. Navy destroyer makes one thing clear. Rank shapes everything from where you sleep and eat to how much privacy you get. But it also comes with constant responsibility. High-ranking officers may have more comfort, but every decision they make affects the ship and everyone on it. So the question is this: do the responsibilities of command outweigh the perks that come with it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And for more first-hand looks into life aboard U.S. Navy ships, be sure to like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.